Journey through time and uncover the events, people, and civilizations that shaped our world. Welcome to the Vault of History.
Hey everyone, think of me as your lead historical investigator today. We are about to crack open the ultimate cold case file on the 20th century. We're taking a magnifying glass to the biggest, boldest claims made by history's most powerful figures. We're going to cross-examine their meticulously crafted public speeches against the devastating historical receipts that actually followed. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and see what happens when the truth finally catches up to power. The source material we're looking at today sets up this fascinating, almost darkly comedic premise. Just picture it, pulling four of the major historical figures of the 20th century into a stark, modern office for a routine corporate fact check. The goal? Separating the lofty promises they broadcasted to millions from the horrific realities their policies actually unleashed. According to the source, if their claims hold up, they get to walk through a green door. But if their words were just manipulative tactics that cost millions of lives, well, they're heading straight for the red door of judgment. Here is the docket for today. We'll be reviewing four distinct case files: Hitler's false peace, Stalin's deadly constitution, Chamberlain's fatal naivety, and Mao's great leap backward before we deliver the final verdict. Let's open file number 1, Hitler's false peace. In his 1940 Reichstag address celebrating his victory over France, Hitler framed his actions as a final appeal to reason. He claimed the war was totally forced upon Germany, and that his movement only ever sought a peaceful revision to the Treaty of Versailles. But the source checks those claims against the actual timeline of aggressive treaty violations, all before World War II even officially started. Germany was rearming in 1935, strike 1. They remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, strike 2. Annexing Austria in 1938, and seizing Czechoslovakia in 1939. The treaty was definitely being revised, but the data shows absolutely none of it was peaceful. To justify kicking off a global war, Hitler actually used this specific claim to showcase his supposed superhuman self-control. He stated Germany was patiently enduring Polish hostility until, quote, returning fire. Right. Well, here's the absolute wildest part about that claim. It's called the Gleiwitz Incident. On August 31st, 1939, German SS troops literally played dress-up. They put on Polish uniforms, staged a fake attack on a German radio station, and even broadcast anti-German messages in Polish. This supposed unprovoked Polish attack? Entirely fabricated, total false flag operation. Hitler's file is just overflowing with contradictions. In that same 1940 speech, he claimed Germany had unlimited resources. In reality, they were deeply reliant on Swedish iron and Soviet fuel. He stood there begging for peace with Great Britain, yet just 3 days prior, he had secretly approved Operation Sea Lion, the literal invasion plan for Britain. And we definitely can't forget the secret Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where he and the Soviets carved up Poland before the war even began. Based on these staggering manipulations, the source unequivocally sends case number 1 straight through the red door. All right, moving on to case file 2, Stalin's deadly constitution. Stalin pushed out this striking claim in 1936, guaranteeing complete equality of rights. He explicitly promised freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of conscience. And at the time, people globally actually touted this constitution as incredibly progressive. But our investigation reveals that this document was essentially the Trojan horse for total authoritarian control. Let's dismantle those progressive promises point by point based on the receipts. Freedom of the press? You had the Glavlit agency, which meant total state censorship. Criticizing the party meant severe punishment or a bullet. Freedom of conscience? Over 40,000 churches were forcibly boarded up. The Constitution even proudly stated that unemployment was eliminated forever. Sounds great, right? Until you realize they passed parasite laws, making it a literal crime to be unemployed. You either worked exactly where the state told you to, or you were shipped off to the rapidly expanding Gulag slave labor system. Stalin boldly called his constitution the victory of socialism, but we have to juxtapose that claim against the horrific reality of the Great Terror that immediately followed from 1937 to 1938. As the source material points out, this supposed victory was written in ink, but signed in blood. The secret police, the NKVD, unleashed mass arrests, show trials, and executions on an industrial scale. The state ran entirely on informant networks and terror, not equality. Get this, 681,692. That is the shocking number of people executed in just a 2-year period during the Great Terror, pulled directly from official Soviet archives. The source highlights that the NKVD was operating on literal regional death quotas, like a macabre grocery list for genocide. If regional commanders didn't meet their execution quotas, they risked being killed themselves. Based on that alone, Stalin goes right behind the red door. Let's look at Case File 3, Chamberlain's Fatal Naivety. This source poses a fascinating historical argument about Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister leading up to World War II. Were his disastrous actions maliciously calculated, or was he just tragically, fatally naive? To figure that out, we look at his triumphant BBC broadcast right after signing the 1938 Munich Agreement. He proudly declared that handing over the Sudetenland to Hitler was just a prelude to lasting European peace. He genuinely told the public that Hitler was a man who could be relied upon once he gave his word. So, the million-dollar question is this: did appeasement actually prevent war? Did handing over a territory that just so happened to contain Czechoslovakia's main military fortifications, mountain defenses, and armament industries satisfy Adolf Hitler's territorial hunger, or did it merely empower him to take more? Spoiler alert, it failed. Massively. Instead of securing peace, appeasement directly allowed Hitler to gather the immense military power he needed. Just 6 months after Chamberlain handed over the Sudetenland, Hitler just marched right in and took the rest of Czechoslovakia. The source tracks the terrifying ripple effect here. Chamberlain's appeasement didn't just fail in the short term. By failing to stop Hitler early, it paved the way for World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust. And the resulting devastation created a massive European power vacuum that burst the Cold War. The source even traces modern geopolitical conflicts back to this exact moment, noting that the Holocaust became the moral justification for the British-backed creation of Israel in 1948. Because of this monumental, catastrophic naivety, the source objectively assigns Chamberlain to the red door as well. Which brings us to our final file, number 4, Mao's Great Leap Backward. We're looking at Chairman Mao Zedong, focusing on his 1958 initiative famously known as the Great Leap Forward. Emerging from decades of civil war, Mao wanted to turn China into a modern, industrialized powerhouse that could rival the West overnight. His sweeping mandate to the nation, steel is the key. But there was a massive problem here. This entire nationwide industrial initiative was built on ideological slogans and fear, rather than, actual engineering. The source notes that local officials were so terrified of saying no to Mao that they panicked and forced a completely unscientific agenda on the public. And the results of those quotas were incredibly tragic. Every town was told to build backyard furnaces. Citizens literally melted down their own farming tools, cooking pots, and even their door handles. The claim sent back to Mao was that they were hitting record steel production, but the devastating reality? They were producing brittle, useless chunks of slag metal while simultaneously destroying the exact tools they needed to harvest their food. To make matters worse, Mao organized the population into people's communes that seized all personal property, animals, and food. Because local officials were so deeply afraid of Beijing, they vastly exaggerated their crop harvest to look successful. The state believed these faked numbers, marched in, and seized all the grain that didn't actually exist. The little real food that remained was locked away by soldiers, while the citizens who actually grew it starved. And if anyone spoke out, even Mao's own defense minister begged him to look at the truth, and he was purged, ensuring an absolute, deadly silence across the country. The human cost of that forced silence is almost incomprehensible. Between 1958 and 1962, between 30 and 45 million people starved to death. To put that in perspective for you, that is more casualties than the entirety of World War I. It stands as the biggest self-inflicted massacre of the 20th century. For this, the source places Mao firmly behind the red door. And that brings us to the final verdict for today's explainer. Reviewing our case files, the source material's conclusion is absolutely clear. All 4 leaders, Hitler, Stalin, Chamberlain, and Mao, are sent through the metaphorical red door of judgment. Whether through malicious manipulation, brutal authoritarianism, or disastrous naivety, they all successfully disguise devastating realities behind lofty promises of peace, progress, and equality. Which leaves us with the most crucial takeaway from all of this. If the absolute deadliest catastrophes of the 20th century were perfectly hidden behind the comforting language of peace, freedom, and economic progress, well, what claims should we be aggressively fact-checking today? Always look for the receipts, guys. Always question the narrative, and never ever take a politician's word as absolute truth. Thank you so much for diving into these files with me. Stay curious and keep fact-checking.
History never ends, it only continues through time. Thank you for watching The Vault of History.